Joshua Pentalaresco. I write stuff in podcast too. Today, Web Bleynat. Did I say that right?
It's Bleynat. It's a
Bleynat?
really
Okay,
weird
okay.
name.
I always feel terrible about that because honestly, like, look at my last name. It's like Joshua Pentalaresco. It's like it's a giant thing, and I figure if I'm torturing people trying to figure my stuff out, I should at least try to get somewhat right. So
Yeah, I'm glad you told me because I would have butchered that.
yeah.
But Bleynat is an obscure name from an obscure ethnicity that nobody has ever heard of, and I believe I am one of. I think we're down to 3 men left in the entire United States who has it. So,
Actually, what ethnicity am I asking? Because mine is kind of unique too. I'm just kind of curious about yours.
Obscure, Waldensian.
Okay, right, it's obscure. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it was this sort of ethno-religious group that lived in the mountains on the border of France and Italy.
Oh, okay. Yeah. See, I'm from that. Like, my name's kind of from that region, but farther south of Italy, and that's Malta. So, like, it's a pretty rare. It's also kind of rare. So it's hard. Usually, it's for me. It's kind of like, rare to see someone rarer than I am, right?
Yeah. Well, actually, funny story about that. I went a couple summers back. I went to Italy for my aunt's marriage. Her wedding, and so while we were in Italy, we decided to go visit the old family homelands. So, by the way, it's gorgeous. The Alps, it's just phenomenal scenery. But we go there, and they have this sort of Waldensian village, or they got the Waldensian Museum, and we go into the Waldensian Museum, and they've got a dude there whose whole job is studying Waldensian history. And so we're like, well, we're the Bleynats. He's like, oh, the Bleynats. And he starts like listing off a bunch of shit about this is when your great grandfather came to America. And this is, all this stuff. And then he's like, the Bleynats would have been in the top 1% of all Waldensians. Like, oh, I guess we were rich. Yeah, most of them would have had 1 cow, but you would have had 5 cows. I'm like, pimping.
Yeah, it's strange how wealth is measured today versus back then. Because we're like, as a culture, I mean, the biggest thing we take for granted is the light bulb, and how that changed everything when we had it. Right. So looking back on it from an ancestral point of view, it's like, yeah, food is still like a high priority for all of us, but we have so much power and electricity and heat, and we just can do a lot more. Like, well, even North America, even at one of its poor parts, is still wealthier than a lot of parts of the world. It's actually really interesting to see how far we've come in terms of wealth.
It's pretty impressive. Although I wouldn't exactly take the Waldensians as a good measure of wealth at the time. Actually, poverty was one of their religious virtues. So that's why I mean, back then, I think, being really wealthy, you would have had many, many cows, but 5 is apparently where we topped out.
I can see the value in that to some degree. I think we all like honestly, hot water is a beautiful thing. It really, really is. Yeah, but
yeah, no, I couldn't do it. I'm a terrible Waldensian. I'm not interested in living.
Well, no, again, different. It's a different time and a different era, and it's a different place. Like we in this particular world, we're all trying to carve our own niches, which is cool. And you're carving your own niche, right? So, I mean, you got into comics. I mean, there's the High Treason League, right? Yeah, and I mean, you told me when we were setting this interview up. I mean, you also sing and you do karaoke on a regular basis. So
yeah, I do that.
Yeah, so I mean, you're pursuing. It sounds like you're a guy that pursues his passions.
Yeah, no, I have a few things that I like to do, and I try to do them as much and as best as I can.
which is honestly a good way. Which is honestly a good way of living. So I'm gonna ask. We're gonna start. I'm gonna start with comics because that's obviously why we're here. How'd you get in? Like, why did you decide to do a comic book?
All right, so my comic book origin story is actually kind of weird, and I'd love to be sitting here and telling you like, I got into it when I read, I don't know, The Dark Knight Returns or something. It was one of the greats. It inspired me. I had to, or since I guess High Treason League is more of a manga type of thing, it's like I read Hunter x Hunter, and now I just had to make that a part of my life. But actually, of all things, the comic that got me into it was this rinky-dink little webcomic called Elguna Shive that I just I had a friend recommend it to me when I was in high school. Read through it. Yeah, I probably wouldn't even like it anymore, but at the time, the thing that got to me is that this was the first time I was reading a comic and I realized, oh, when you're doing comics, you can do just literally anything.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever comes into your head. This dude has like squirrel girls running around and people transforming with magic and getting into weird fights and just whatever he feels like doing. And of course, for me, I just had always, I was growing up, I hadn't really read a whole lot of comics. All I had access to was my dad's old collection, and he was into superheroes, so that's all I really knew comics as. So then I just realized, hey, you can do whatever. And then after a while, I discovered anime and manga, and my new favorite author slash artist, Hirohiko Araki, the guy who did JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
Okay.
Guy.
That's a fun one.
Who really, really goes for the whole just do whatever you want in comics thing. He I think is the epitome of that. So
he's definitely one of them.
Yeah. So I decided I wanted to make some comics of my own. And I've been doing some work on it here and there. I've written some superhero stories. I work with a friend of mine, Alex Daw, who's in charge of NRG Comics. I wrote Xener Master of the Mind issue 0 for him, which is available somewhere online for free. I think, depending, it was on our Indiegogo crowdfunding page, but that didn't quite meet its goal. But I think the page might still be there. So if you want to search that up, the link to the free issue 0 is on there. But I wanted to do something with my own characters, so I came up with this idea for a setting where if you beat up or defeat a person in a position of power, you get to take their position of power. And that was sort of what kicked off High Treason League. That, and I took inspiration from Hunter x Hunter. I took inspiration from One Piece. So it's sort of this story where you're journeying through the world. You got to get the team together. There's this whole well-formed magic system that you have to operate within the rules of, and people get into fights and work their way up the chain, and they're all aiming for the position of the world king. So that's the basic story premise.
Interesting. So, are you a gamer by any chance? I should ask that question before we continue, because it's a very interesting. There's definitely a Japanese market for those kind of stories, and I've read a few of them myself. But I'm just curious: did you start off as a gamer? Was it just the manga that inspired you to do that, go in with this concept, or just something you've always kind of wanted to tell?
It was the manga, really. I don't game much. Most of my gaming time is spent just doing like Minecraft casually. Um, but for sure, the main inspiration is manga.
Okay, so you like the battle royale style? It's almost like it's a battle royale style manga, and there's some really good ones. Like one of my favorites was Batum. I really enjoyed that. Although a very weird concept, it's an interesting take on it. Battle royale is the classic version of it. But what's so appealing about that story for you? That kind of story for you?
I think for me, what I wanted to play with most is that in a world where the strongest people are always in charge, I wanted to see how that would affect the people who are, under them or who are living under this system. Um, so we're going to start off the story in one of the villages that's been taken over by somebody who beat up the last baron and took his place, um, and just see how people are living, because uh, these people have been sort of abused and beaten down their whole lives, and then a select few of them have the power to fight back, and so it sort of kicks off the whole story uh, with the effects of this system, and how people are reacting to it, sort of kick off the events that lead to the story of High Treason League.
So you can make the argument that one person's treason is another person's liberation. So right? You can. I mean, the United States was basically funded on overthrowing the previous leaders.
Absolutely.
Right? Australia the same way, actually. So I mean, there's a lot of history in the world where, like, you can make like we live in a very, very strange world today, in that we have more wealth like gathered in like a bunch of places than since the French Revolution. Like that's literally what's going on in the world right now. And so it's interesting to watch how so few people can impact a whole world. We live in that time right now. So it's interesting to watch how all of us view this time. Some people just go with the flow. Like someone like me is kind of like, sort of people like me are kind of in the middle. Like they don't like what they're seeing, but on the same token, maybe not quite sure what to do about it. And then there are other people that just want to openly fight the system. And right.
Continue.
Pardon?
I said sorry. Continue. I had a thing to say, but it sounded like you were wrapping up.
Yeah. So basically, like, is that like where I'm coming from is this? See, every story, in one sense, has been told before, but everybody brings kind of like their own thing to it, like the thing that they really care about and how we tell the story. So what's that for you? Like what is the part where I'm gonna hope I don't butcher this. Bleynat, what part is specifically you? What are you bringing to the story that no one else would?
Well, actually, I really, in this story, wanted to play a lot with what you'd been saying, that one person's treason is another person's liberation. Because the main characters in this story see themselves as fighting for freedom. Whereas there are also a lot of other people, they're not the only people in the world who are trying to take over the top position.
Sure.
Everybody wants to do it. But the people who are doing it for the reasons that they just want power, even if they succeed, nothing really changes. It's just a different group of people doing the exact same thing. And then some people might say they want liberation, but they really want power, and that's the same result.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what I want to a lot of the message that I want to get across with this book is, um, there are always going to be people in charge um, who don't want what's best for you. And the only way to change that is to go into it with a genuine vision for how you want the world to be better, rather than cynically trying to, uh, snatch power for yourself and using people to that end. Um, so a big this story's theme, I guess, then is how does one make a positive change, uh, even if it requires violence or these other sort of nasty things? Because you're right, like we have all these nations like America and Australia, I guess. America in particular is the one I would be thinking of,
Sure.
where you have to fight. You had to fight for your freedom, and across the pond, that was seen as treason, and here it was seen as fighting for liberation, and um, and in that case, it worked out because I think that the people who were running that effort genuinely wanted something better for the country.
I tend to agree with that. I mean history does have a tendency to be written by the winners, but generally speaking, um, the nature is like when people are from a distance, you don't look at people day to day the same way. I look at the fact that I've been very critical of leadership in this time, and one of the reasons why I've been very critical is because it's really our problems are simple. Like there's almost like two or three different worlds between where we are at, where a lot of people are at, and where their leaders are. Our leaders don't eat the same food we eat. They don't live in the same way we live. It's easy to manage somebody when you have the luxury of distance.
Yeah,
It's
the
much
ivory
more.
tower syndrome.
Pardon?
Ivory tower syndrome.
Like it happens it happens even now. There's it's a very slippery slope. If you're a public official, if you're a form of government, you need access to people. But on the flip side, there are some crazy people out there.
Yeah.
And there has to be kind of like a little bit. There has to be a filter for everybody. And even with that filter, you're going to get overwhelmed. So the temptation is, well, you can just vote. Honestly, I feel, especially in an age like today, like you don't have to give me your city specifically, but what state are you in, if you don't mind my asking?
Tennessee.
So you're in Tennessee, I'm in Canada. We are having a conversation right now, and the fact that we can have this conversation right now, it's pretty freaking cool, actually.
Yeah, for sure.
Why couldn't I have that conversation with, say, my prime minister, or you with your president? Even if it's only for like 15 minutes, to lobby in the way lobbying is actually meant to be, which is just a person sharing their concerns. Can you solve our problems? Can you see what we're seeing? We live in a world today where that is actually possible, right? And in a way, and in a much more filtered and controlled environment. So, I mean, you still will deal with crazy. I mean, you can't completely escape it, but I think there would be a significant way to improve quality of living across the board, because that's available now, right? I mean, seriously. I mean, you don't think the president of the United States can get Zoom? I mean, honestly, we live in that world. Like the world of like from a point of view of communication, there is virtually no difference between me and Bill Gates. There is none. He's got cooler toys than me, don't get me wrong. But essentially, I can talk to anybody. He can talk to anybody. And that's a really cool power. And we could the possibility of that interaction is actually, I still feel, is underutilized. And it would ease a lot of tensions, right?
Oh, absolutely. And frankly, I'd imagine that the reason that the potential is there and isn't being utilized is because they don't really want it to be utilized. I think these people like being exactly where they're at.
For sure. That's human nature, though. Look, let's say for the sake of argument, okay? Let's say for the sake of argument, your comic takes off. You get that manga series because something tells me the idea of television appeals to you. I could be wrong, but I could see it. I could maybe an animated series. That'd be really cool.
Oh, I'd love it.
Yeah, right. You're doing this, and you're suddenly very, very successful. Suddenly, some other series is going to come up. If you don't come up with something new, what are you going to do? You're going to come up with something new, or you're going to tell the same story, even the same story all over again. Why? Because you have hit a certain pinnacle, and you want to stay there, or go higher, or better. That's a perfectly human perspective, right? We all want to grow, right? The danger, or we all want to thrive and prosper. There's nothing inherently good or evil about that, right? But it's the willingness to stay uncomfortable. It's the willingness to keep growing and not just settle in. If you choose you're happy in your spot, eventually you're going to lose it. The nature of the beast is everything changes, right? You can't halt change. So you can slow it down, but you can't halt it. It's impossible. So you have to be willing to roll with the punches and do what you're going to do. So, and honestly, this feels like such a logical next step and an easier next step. I do think it's going to happen sooner than later. The one thing I will say about Obama that was really interesting to watch when he was president, he would do talk shows more. He would do a lot more things that would reach out to people in a good way. And I actually thought, he had his good points, he had his bad points, but that I actually really enjoyed about him because it gave a better sense of accessibility to him, which I think definitely helps, right?
Maybe. I would argue, though, that might be the illusion of accessibility because, even if he goes on a talk show, I've never talked to a talk show host. I don't think I could get one on the phone if I tried.
You probably could. I'm not honestly, just for fun, this is what you do. This is just for shits and giggles, and I bet you might be surprised. It never hurts to try. Take a press release of your book. You got your book. Write a press release. Send it to every talk show host you want. Why not? What's the worst that's going to happen? They tell you no.
I might pick you up on that. That's actually an interesting idea.
Yeah, well, no, because honestly, it's not even that. Most people don't give themselves permission to ask. I've learned, one thing I've learned in my own career is that you ask for stuff, sometimes you get it. I don't know if you know who Spider Robinson is, but if you don't, that's fine. He's a legendary science fiction writer. And I remember I went to his concert, the Beatles, when I was out in Vancouver. Next day, I saw him checking out of the hotel, and I said, you know what? If all he can tell me is no. I went up to him and asked if he would come on my show. He gave me his phone number. He gave me his contact information. And it was a hell of a conversation. I'm perfect, right? And we talked about his dinner at the White House. So, we talked about his wife. It was such a cool conversation. If I hadn't asked, I never would have gotten it. Right. And even if I had gotten a no, who cares? Right. I tried. And it's the same boat. It's the same boat with you. I have found that for the most part, people are willing to at least hear you out. So if you have a good enough reason to hear yourself out, right? Why not see if you can get on Oprah? Who cares? If you can't do it, whatever. It doesn't hurt your feelings, right? I have tried so many crazy things in this time. I've tried to get Alice Cooper on this show. No joke. I've tried other, because why not? If there's a no.
If you can get Alice Cooper on, damn.
Yeah, but why not, right? There's no harm in asking. Because again, I might get a million no's, but all I really need is one yes. And I'm somewhere I've never thought I would get to. Sometimes it's that simple. Yeah.
Well, yeah, man. Yeah. I think you're onto something there.
Yeah. And you're like, I never thought about that before.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I tend to figure that these people wouldn't give me the time of day, but you're right. I mean, they wouldn't give me the time of day if I didn't ask either. So it's basically
Well,
the same.
it's most people ask themselves like, why me? That's actually the wrong question to ask. Why not me? Right? Like that's actually the way you should ask that question, because honest to God, right? It's not that you're gonna get a lot of no's. Like we are like you're in art. Guess what? Art is the rejection business.
Absolutely.
Right? It's almost like trying to get the pretty girl to go on the date. He's like, hey, so listen, you want to go out on a date with me? And if you're awkward and nervous and like, I don't know what I'm doing. Sometimes they think it's cute. Most of the time, they're just gonna say no. Why? Because you're not confident enough to look them in. But if you look them in the eye and go, I think you're amazing, and you gotta mean it, right? I think you're amazing. It'd be really cool to do something with you. Can we go out for like coffee or something? You'll get it, yeah. You'll at least get the coffee. Now you may not get anything beyond that, but you'll get the coffee, right? It's because again, you're confident. You've approached them. It's like, and honestly, it's like whatever. I mean, what's the worst that can happen, right? And people will take that chance on you, right? Because it's not like again, you have to be authentic. You can't just do it like, hey, I have no hidden motivations whatsoever. They don't care about that. That's not the game. The real game is, can you establish a relationship with people? If you can do that, you'll get access to doors you never would imagine you're capable of. Again, but you've got to have that going in. Why not you?
Yeah, you are like the best self-help motivational speaker. You should do that for money. What they say, if you do something, never do it for free.
Well, kind of. I mean, I could, I guess. Self-help's a really interesting thing, like the business of helping people. I don't mind helping people out and promoting their stuff, but the business of it's a pain, because you're dealing with a lot of people that are comfortable, right? Or maybe aren't like people. I find it best when people really genuinely need help and come to you and want help. That's and if they're serious about it, they'll do little things that will convince you that they're serious about it. And if they're not serious about it, they will do those little things that kind of give away. I don't have I'm just enough of an asshole to walk away from people that I clearly believe are not serious. Like that's just how I am, and that's maybe my best / worst quality, but it's the truth. Like that is it. So I'm not sure I'm quite a self-help guy, but I do try to make people feel good. But I mean, here's the thing, right? What's your goal? Like seriously, what's your goal with your comic? Like, what would you like? Let's do perfect dream world. You get everything you could possibly imagine. What do you want to do?
I would want to have, not just this comic, but sort of several properties, all of which are culturally relevant. The kind of thing that maybe your grandmother hasn't read, but she's like heard of. Sort of like maybe your grandmother hasn't watched Star Wars, but she knows what it is. That thing. I'd love to have adaptations in TV and movies and all of that. That would be the absolute perfect situation, I think, where the stuff I make is well known enough to be sort of a cultural touchstone.
So your goal is to be like, we'll just say maybe a television series, maybe not necessarily The Walking Dead, maybe, or Game of Thrones. Like is that where you want to go, or do you want like movie kind of deal? Like do you want like a movie franchise? Like what would you prefer?
If I had to pick between the two, I would definitely prefer a television show. I think it's just,
okay.
It's a better way to adapt long form writing. Sure. I think because that's the difference between The Last Airbender, the TV show, and The Last Airbender, the M. Night Shyamalan.
Okay. So let me just ask you this then. Have you looked seriously at the steps it would take to do that?
Well, I mean, first, obviously, I'd have to have a body of work that was lengthy enough to.
Yes, that's
But
we're going to assume you're working towards that. Have you looked at what that would take?
I mean, obviously, I'd have to get to know some of the people who can make that happen because, I mean, nobody in nobody, at least in America, is paying much attention to what manga they can translate into properties. If they're trying to adapt comics, it's usually either superhero stories or sci-fi stuff, from what I can gather. But you know, I need to know the right people to sort of say like, hey, put eyes on me. You want to make my thing.
So, okay. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes. Think about this. I want you to be really serious about this for a second here. I don't think you need to worry about trends. They're going to ignore trends for the moment because trends can change like that.
True.
Okay, so ignore trends. Tell people, how many issues is your series?
Oh, I don't have a hard number on it.
Do you have it broken down to like story arcs at least, like complete stories?
Yeah, I have a general sense of the story arcs that I'm going to tell with a little bit of leeway in case I come up with.
Sure. But give me a round number. Give me a round number for the first arc.
Hold on, let me count up.
Again, this is 5 minutes. I'm gonna give you 5 minutes of something to really think about going forward. So I'm gonna give you 5 minutes, but you need to answer this question.
Let me just ballpark it at 12 arcs.
12 arcs. How many parts per? How many issues per arc?
Let's say 10 to 15 issues per arc.
Okay.
And they'll be half the length of the issue that's out now. This one is double length.
Okay. So let me give you what I would do is the first 3 steps to making your dream come true. All right, the first 3 steps. Finish an arc. However long it takes you, finish an arc. I would see if I could break that down into like 4 issues, like the first story part, I would try to do that. Because once you have 4 issues, okay, you'll have a complete story.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I think the first arc is going to be the shortest one. So I think
we'll get to that. That's logistics. This is what I want you to think about. Is not those details are important, but they're not for this goal here. First step is to finish an arc.
Yep.
And all the problems that comes with it. Now, why is that important? Because you'll have proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that you can complete a project. Why is that important? Because if you can prove that, people will take you seriously. 2. Now, this is where we were talking a little off the air about books to read and stuff like that. Find the agents of your manga friends, the manga books you really love. Find their agents. Contact them. See if they'd be interested in something you have. Because really, can I make a wonderful, fun suggestion? Right? Okay. Do you really care if it starts here being successful here? It'd be cool if it was, but if it was successful in Sweden or Japan or Slovenia or wherever it was, does it really matter to you? Does it really matter?
I don't care if it takes off as long as someone's reading it.
Okay. So that's 2. So you find those agents and you pitch it. Pitch your story. The fact that you have a completed book, they will take you a lot more seriously than if you didn't have one. And then 3. Okay? Repeat. I want you to be and the other thing is too, as you go down in this journey, more and more steps will become apparent of how to reach that goal. Your job, if this is something you really want, is to figure out how to be as specific as possible with your goals. The more specific you are, the more it will be possible for it to happen. I'm not going to make you any guarantees. Here's the deal. Success doesn't come out of like thin air. Most of us that get any kind of real success have a tendency to put in a lot of work to get there, right? I have 5 books out right now. I have a full series finished. I've proven already that I can finish a project. I'm working on a bunch more stuff right now, right? I have goals, very specific goals with all this stuff. One of my goals I have goals for how to take my properties and market them in different ways. All of them in different ways. I want to be getting into video games more so than I want to get into television. But that's me. That's my own personal thing. So I have some, my criteria is a little different than yours, but essentially the same thing. You figure out, you look for the stuff you really like. You figure out who's in charge of those things you really, really, really like, and you just shoot for it. And if you get no, well, that's fine. You're going to get no for now. But then if you get into a talking thing, get into a first name basis, you can truly do that if you have the ability to get to that point. Because if you can get to that point where you are at least on a conversation on a first or second name basis, you'll have established a relationship. Maybe this series will not be the one that makes it, but maybe it's the next one, or the next one, or the next one. It doesn't matter. You have an open door now that you never had before. And that's the game you're playing, right? Prove you can finish a project. Find the people you want to work with and establish a relationship with them. And not just, oh, I want to work with you so we can make zillions of dollars. I mean, sure, but be genuine in your relationship with people. Because people appreciate that. They don't want to feel like they're being used. There you go. 5 minutes.
Cool. Yeah, and it generally aligns with what I've been planning to do. I really want to, obviously I want to push this now, but I really want to make a big push when I've got like a full arc done and, you know, have a story that I can tie up in a little bow.
But I'm just throwing this at you like this. Something to consider. Like, and I guess I'll give you the last piece of advice. And that's it. I need you to be honest with yourself, which is in this sense. Look at yourself in the mirror and go, what do I do in my life that could possibly fuck up my chances? And be very honest with yourself. You don't need to answer, like, this is not something you need to answer on the air, right? Because if you can come to terms with that at the early stuff, know your strengths, know your weaknesses, right? Accentuate your strengths, hide your weaknesses, right? Put yourself in positions where your strengths will shine and where your weaknesses aren't so apparent. If you must confront your weaknesses, do so honestly, right? Because if you can do that, if you can truly do that and figure that out, you get knocked on your ass a couple times here and there, but you'll keep getting back up and people will cannot help but notice you.
True.
Right, am I making you a little nervous? Because I don't, it's not the idea.
But speaking of things that can fuck my chances up, I'm gonna go grab another beer if you don't mind.
Go right ahead. I think I made him nervous, ladies and gentlemen. But it is what it is. I have always said this to people, and I mean this. There's no reason why it can't be you. Right? It may not happen. I can't say it ever will happen, but it might. Right? And what you want to do is prepare yourself going forward.
All right.
So what kind of beer is it?
This is the Sweetwater 420 Extra Pale Ale.
Extra Pale Ale?
Yeah, I don't know
what have alcohol in it.
Pale, but you know, it's apparently paler than your average ale.
Okay. Does it actually have alcohol in it? Just remember, I'm Canadian, so if it's anything, it's got to be at least 5% for me to think it's got alcohol in it.
Okay, let's see. 5.7, yeah.
Okay, it's not bad. Not bad.
Yeah, no, I don't drink that piss water shit.
All right. If I made you nervous earlier, I'm sorry. I just
Oh,
wanted to actually,
no,
I just wanted to explore
it didn't
what a
make me
lot of,
nervous at all.
yeah, what I want, what I always tell everybody is like, there's no such thing as an unsolvable problem, right? I can't, no, there's no guarantees in life, but you can at the very least increase the odds of your success, if that makes sense. So,
Right.
yeah. And the more specific you are, the more you can do it. But anyway, we'll move on. I wish you luck. I hope it all like works out for you, man. Where I hope you get where you want to go. Right? Yeah.
Yeah, man, I do too. I
Yeah.
really, because I mean, I think I've got a good story here with
Mhm.
some really cool characters, and I think that people should definitely look into it.
And we'll talk more about that when this all wraps up. But to continue down this line of stuff, like we mentioned this, I mentioned this earlier. So so what was first, your love of manga or your love of karaoke?
Manga came first. Karaoke is actually a relatively recent development for me. I only got into that about, I guess it would be 2 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
No, maybe more like just a year and a half. But but yeah, I just found a karaoke place, realized I liked it, started going every weekend, and that's what I do to unwind these days.
So what do you like to sing? What are your favorite things?
My signature song, I think, is Santeria by Sublime.
Okay, that's cool. See, I can do some Linkin Park, and then everything else I kind of destroy. Like, and that's so I'll give you a fun story. So at CanCon in Ottawa, Ontario, we had like the night karaoke, and I did this, and I was able to do this Aerosmith song from 20 years. I could do 20 years ago. It was 20 years ago. So I go up there, and it's one of their like obscure ones too. It's an obscure one, so no one can help me. It just, I literally, the song got murdered. Like it was just a vicious little murder of a song that yeah. So I actually ended up tweeting, for those that loved Aerosmith, I am so sorry. I kind of like, yeah, the poor song did not deserve the fate I gave it. It just did not deserve it. But I mean, it's all about having fun too, right? It's not really. I mean, if you're great at it, there are people that are great at karaoke, and you might be one of them. I don't know, but the important thing is really to have fun, right?
Yeah, well, I like to think I'm at least one of the better ones, but you don't know karaoke down here in the American South. It's a bit of a different animal because every drunk asshole wants to sing the same. I swear, country songs are all just the same song with a bunch of different lyrics over the top of it, and they they all sing them in just the most sort of um, what's the word I would use for it? Like um, just completely emotionless way. I mean, in country, real country singers, they get like kind of a twang going. They I'm not a huge country fan, but they get sort of a twang going. They do some interesting things with their voice, but everyone around here just wants to sing a slow, low effort country song, and you just want to die. It just goes on, and then the next person is doing the same thing.
So lot to unpack there. I'm gonna be country's not my favorite stuff either, generally speaking. That all said, there's a point like even with like rock and roll songs. If you really sit there and think about it, they all have a similar, especially in North America, they have a very similar formula.
Yeah,
Right.
for sure. Sort of
Right.
the Chuck Berry kind of formula.
Yeah, it's just there's a formula to it. Like mainstream country music has a formula. Every once in a while, you're blown away because like classic. There are some. I had a girlfriend in Arizona, and she loved country, and I was not crazy about it, but I'd listen to it, and some of it is really romantic, and like in like the tragic. It's a little. Sometimes it's tragic, sometimes it's not. But there's a really like there's something very poignant and very can touch the heart. Some of it.
Oh yeah.
Some of it's just depressing. Like my best friend's cheating on. Like I really could care less about that stuff. Some of it's funny. Some of it can be very 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 funny. Some of it can be like there is a range to it. I find people that I find like the really good like much like anything else, most of the really good like stuff of richness and a originality to it is almost never the stuff you hear on the radio. It's almost always something you have to look for. The good news is the access is all there if you want to find it. Bad news is you may not see it at a karaoke bar on Saturday night.
Yeah, that's the thing. Because I mean, I should qualify my statement by saying that there are a lot of really good country songs out there with some very good lyrics and some great hooks. What I mean is that that's not what these people are singing. The most low effort, paint by numbers kind of made for radio country songs you've ever heard. And that's where it just sort of all bleeds together.
Yeah, it does have a tendency, but so are you more in the city or are you in a more rural area of Tennessee?
I'm pretty close to good sized city, not a huge one.
Okay, so somewhere in the middle. So you probably get a little bit of people from the city, people from the country, and yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I can imagine. Like I said, I lived in Arizona in the middle of nowhere. There were a lot of country. You learn very much when you travel. When in Rome, you do what everybody else does. You learn that very, very, very quickly because it's like, is this to your taste? Not exactly, but it's what's here. So I guess I better learn to find some appreciation for it somewhere, right? Do you like so when you see the drunk people go up there, do you like give like a scorecard like 4, 5, 10, right? Because I'm sure every once in a while you get pleasantly like surprised too, because like, there are some
all the time. I get pleasantly surprised quite often. I mean, when you're doing karaoke, at any given karaoke place, 80 to 90% of the people there are gonna be kind of bleh, you know. But when there's a standout, and it's not always from places you expect. I'm trying to think what some of the good examples might be. I don't know. Like, I mean, for instance, there was a lady who came in a wheelchair, and I can't sing nearly as well sitting down, but boy, she could blast the freaking pipes.
blew you away.
Yeah, she was really good.
What was the song? Do you remember the song?
Oh God, why is my phone ringing? Let me go turn that off. One sec.
Yeah, worries. We are live, ladies and gentlemen. This is what happens when you go live.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So, what was it? It was just a couple weeks ago. I should remember. It was funny because actually my friend and I, it was something about dancing. My friend, he leans over and is like, cracks some joke about like, that's making me sad. But I mean, it's but I don't remember what it was. She did a phenomenal job. I just can't remember.
No, it's fine. Totally fine.
It was.
No, it's totally fine. I asked this because it's always the little things that surprised you, right? So
yeah.
And another ex-girlfriend, she can sing Fight Song, like the song Fight Song, just so beautifully, and it's just like, wow, you're good, like wow, you're really 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 good, and it blows you away. Like I think one of the most genuine things about the world is people continuously surprise you, and oftentimes, and sometimes for the very best. I as crazy as it is right now, I am genuinely pleasantly surprised overall with people. So I don't know what it's been like with you guys down in Tennessee, but I mean, I'm sure you've had your shares of ups and downs and crazy, but hopefully you've had some pleasant surprises in the last year.
Oh yeah, some this last year has definitely been very interesting. But yeah, you go out and as things have sort of opened back up, you do fun things and you meet people, and I've gotten invited to some of the most interesting uh, things I've done in a while. Like out of the blue, some guy I met at karaoke, he's just like, "Hey, you want to come to a driving range?" I'm like, "Hell, I've
Yeah,
never been to a driving range." Driving ranges these days are apparently just giant video games. Who knew?
yeah. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. You know,
No, it's awesome. You get to swing some clubs and play Angry Birds with the golf ball. It's great.
yeah. You good? Are you at the point now where you're like you're at least into the negative numbers, or are you still like it's all positive, it's all good still when it comes to your final score?
Oh, well, we didn't like play actual golf. Um, I mean, it was just a driving range, uh, but towards the end of it, I was starting to get the hang of it. I won the Angry Birds mini game. Like it's a whole augmented reality kind of setup. So you hit the ball, and the computer tracks the ball and uses it as an Angry Bird to hit a virtual castle of pigs. It's pretty cool.
Nice.
So I ended up winning that, but then he kicked my ass at putt putt. So
Hey, you know what? That's the important stuff, man. It's the little things,
yeah,
And I mean, there's always another driving range going, "Hey, putt putt the revenge. I'll get you next time."
get his ass.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Well, my friend. So obviously, you're not. We were talking about this. Like you've kind of come into this from a very manga perspective. So, what's your favorite one all time?
My favorite one of all time is JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I love JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Um, it hasn't really. It's not as big an influence on the one I'm doing. Mine is sort of a combination of One Piece and Hunter x Hunter. But JoJo's Bizarre Adventure I love because it's not only is it really creative with the abilities that all the characters have, but every fight is essentially a chess match. It's not strong dudes punching each other to see who has the bigger number. It's you know there's an enemy. You don't know what the enemy can do. You don't know how to beat them, and you have to figure all of this out while under attack. And it's really very cool. I try to integrate that sort of um, the creative uses of powers and strategy into my work wherever I can.
Yeah. Okay. For me, it's Full Metal Alchemist.
It's a solid one.
Yeah, I love that one. It's a really, really good one. I'm currently reading Spy X Family. It's hilarious. I really, really dig it. Spy, assassin, and the telepath. Just kind of like, you know,
I've heard of that one. I've not read it, but it
it's
sounds
funny.
cool.
It is ridiculously funny because it's all from the point of view. The kid's the telepath, so she's the only one that knows that he's a spy and she's an assassin. And whenever he gets into like spy mode, she completely like because she loves them both and wants to stay with them. So it's hilariously it's a family that of convenience. It's actually becoming a family. It's such a fun book. It really, really, really is. And yeah, I am enjoying that one tremendously. I'm probably going to review that one at some point because it's really, really good. But no, like it's manga. The thing I love about manga is it's almost like you almost never feel like you're ripped off because the price point of modern comics being what it is, it's especially like when you look at a more mainstream book. I'm not gonna name names because again, it's just no point. It feels like you're getting a much more advertisement than you're getting story. That's not true with all of them. Some of them really can knock you on the butt, but there's definitely that feeling of that. You never get that with a manga. A manga, you get a full story. You're right with a lot of pages to tell your book, and it blows you away every time in like the best possible way.
And I wouldn't, mind all the advertising if there was a story there. But I feel like the Western comic scene has sort of lost its way and is just treading water. There hasn't been a relevant new superhero for like, what, 20, 30 years? And the ones that have come up have all been based off of existing ones.
Well, okay. So it really depends on how you look at where Western comics are at. If you're looking at the most relevant superhero, probably the modern era, it's probably Harley Quinn. Probably, right?
Right. I mean, yeah, sort of. I mean, but that's still the 90s, which.
Oh, no. I got you. But let me finish the point. Like, part of it to do is the evolution of the genre itself. It's not a strictly superhero market anymore. I mean, if you're looking at books that made a memorable impact in the last 10 years, there's Sega, there's The Walking Dead, there's, there's stuff like, hold on, I'm trying, there's one that's escaping my brain right now. Give me a second to think about it. There's like the Jonathan Hickman's universe, there's Rick Remender's stuff. I mean, Mike Mignola's Hellboy, which is probably one of the more pertinent ones in the last 20 years too. But if you notice this, it's not a superhero theme anymore. It's just a superhero playground anymore. I could mention Warren Ellis, but considering everything that just happened to him, and maybe he's not in vogue at the moment. All of which to say that we've kind of come to a very interesting point in comics in the sense that Western comics is experimenting away with superhero stuff. If you look at anything not DC or Marvel, in DC or Marvel, there's been you've put a lot of investment into a lot of characters over the last, in some cases, hundreds of years. Superman's nearly 100 years old. Seriously, like that is amazing when you sit there and think about how long that character's been around. And Batman is not much younger, right?
Yeah, and the fact that they're still so relevant, at least in other media, is very impressive.
Yeah, so there's an investment there, and as a result, it's very traditional publishing has been facing for a very, very long time this risk-reward ratio. It's because backlists are such a big part of the business of publishing, whether it's indie or indie traditional, it's your backlist that makes your money. To Kill a Mockingbird has been a big seller for traditional book publishers for nearly 100 years too, or not quite that long, but it's been a long time. And the reason being, classics sell over and over and over and over again. Why? Because they've been around for so long, it just seeps in. So if you look at it, if you're looking at it strictly from a point of view of investment, it almost makes sense to invest in an older property. The flip side is you have to have a constant fresh face, fresh voice, fresh concept where your market shrinks.
Yeah.
Right. And if you look at it,
getting it here, it's sort of what I'm getting at here, because even, my main criticism of the comics industry in the Americas is that, or at least in North America, is that there's not a whole lot of stuff going on that that's like, oh wow, I would never have thought of that. The Walking Dead, it's great. It's well written. It's an interesting take on a zombie apocalypse, but it's still just a book about a zombie apocalypse, which is a well known and well explored kind of thing. I don't see out of Western comics the sort of off the wall ideas that revolutionize anything.
Most of those are in the indie zone, like in the crowdfunding stuff, in the and that's where it is right now. Because and you will find stuff there. Like I look at some of the stuff that is also not being picked up by television and stuff in those markets, and they're not just coming from DC or Marvel anymore, or Boom or Image or any of those places. They're coming from everywhere because the demand for content has gone up, not down. So it's one of those situations now where anyone can be picked up in the right circumstances. But as a counter, as a bit of as something to think about, all right, like I said, there's no really new story. All there really is how we tell it. And it's been that way for a very long time, right? I can come up with some really cool, fun ideas. And I do. Like I have lots of them. Like Alice Zero, which a book of poetry was Alice in Wonderland is Greek mythology. Alice is Pandora. I released it last year, right? That's a cool idea. But I'm also essentially telling a story that's been told before. The only difference is how I'm telling it and what expectations I'm trying to fulfill. The problem, I think, more specifically, it's very apparent that these are older formulas that need an update, a little bit of an update of how they told them. And
there are no new stories, but there are new concepts.
Yeah, well, just new ways of telling it for sure, right? And that's kind of what we're due for. I do think like with the comics, like the current, I would call it a comics boom, even though it doesn't measure the same. It doesn't have the same metric anymore, right? It's no longer about a company having like this big, towering, best-selling book. That honestly does not matter. There are some towering, best-selling books. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that the importance of it is not what it once was. The important.
Is there a comics boom now, though? I know there's an indie boom, but indies are still a small sliver of the industry.
It's not as small as people think. Look, even before the pandemic, the number 2 publisher of comics was Kickstarter. Wasn't actually stated that way, but Kickstarter's been a big beacon for comics for a very long time. What's happened in the last year, is crowdfunding has shown the value of niche. Like your niche, whatever that niche is. You're a battle royale comic meets high fantasy, which is cool. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with that. That's where you're at. So your fan bases are people that dig battle royale, people that dig like Dungeons and Dragons. Like your whole concept feels very much like, or there was an Image book I'm trying to think of that came out last year before everything went kind of wonky. Had kind of a similar had a bit of a Magnificent Seven vibe to it, but just in an inverse version of it. But no matter how you look at that concept, right? The fact is we all have niches, and there's demands for all these niches. Now, there's more demand than others because there's less like competition in their spaces. I interviewed Jim Noble. He's doing phenomenally well right now. Then there are people that have established themselves for a long time, like Dirk Manning and Kalen Smith, and they do a great killing. And then, right, the fact of the matter is the boom. What's happened is the comic boom is not the towering bestseller anymore. Although they did that could come about tomorrow. It could happen. It's the fact that everybody's got their own little corner in the universes, and people are now have more access to finding the books they like, right? And that's like, whether it's through Indiegogo, whether it's through Kickstarter, whether it's through the Diamond Catalog. But right, the fact of the matter is that it's now, instead of this broad giant thing, it's gone this way. It's spread out. There's space for everybody, or at least there seems to be space for everybody, right? There are failures in this, sure, but there's a lot of successes right now too.
Well, I don't know, but I do think there needs to be that big breakout at some point, because
Sure.
I think for the sake of comics as a whole, it's better to have one book that sells 100,000 than 20 books that sell 5,000. And you might say, well, that's not better for the creators because then there's fewer creators. But if we're talking about cultural relevance, the 100,000 people who got that book can talk to each other, and the 5,000 people who bought one of those 20 books can't talk to the 5,000 people who bought another one, because they don't overlap.
Are you sure?
They might overlap. Some people might have bought both, but if people have bought both, then that's a smaller pool of people, right?
Okay, so there's two streams of thought to that. Okay, having that big tower, I do agree that big towering hit's nice.
Yeah,
but
I think the towering hit needs to be there for the sake of the smaller books.
See, I'm not sure that's the case anymore, and I'll tell you why. Fact of the matter is, I mean, if you yeah, we all would love to sell 100,000 books. Let's be real. We all would like to sell that. But if I'm selling 5,000, okay, or I'm selling 10,000, which is not out of the realm of possibility even for any of those creators, what I've essentially done now is I've created my own audience. UFC, if you want to talk like a good example of this, like in the big time, is the UFC. When the Ultimate Fighter first came out, and UFC had become relevant, if you compared their numbers versus what was available on television, they were a lot smaller than average, but their pay-per-view buys were bigger than every other pay-per-view revenue. And this is at that time, WWE was still a big pay-per-view heavy business, and UFC got more buys with a smaller audience than WWE did with a bigger one. And the reason why was because there was almost like an 80% return of investment. If you have 5,000 fans and all of them are investing in you, that 100,000 is nice, but some of those will not stick with you. There's always a diminishing returns. But if you have a loyal 5,000 or 6,000 people supporting you, that's a living, and actually a comfortable one at that, as a creative. And if somehow, some way you hit the right, it's not always about the quantity, it's about the quality. If let's say for like talking about your book, for example, you find a network executive that loves the battle royale concept, needs something new, and he buys your Kickstarter. Well, does it? And you have an audience of 5,000, or Indiegogo, you have an audience of 5,000. Well, you already have built an audience there, and they can build from that have already committed to you. You have that kind of following. Imagine on a larger scale. Sometimes the advantage to the 100,000 number is the platforms they have to promote. But at the same time, everybody wants that rabid fan base. When I was doing publicity for an author, he didn't care about the big places. He cared about the people that were excited about his genre, because those are the people that are going to talk to everybody else about it. And then who knows where that goes. So, and I think he's right. I think that's honestly where I feel like that is where the business is. And honestly, that's probably where it needs to be. It's no longer having a big company serving niches. It's the fact that there's a demand for a service that these big companies do not have anymore that you can fulfill. And that's, I think, a damn cool thing.
I suppose, though, that my concern is scalability. The potential for a book to go really big needs to be there. And even with the largest crowdfunding things that they get, $1 million, that's still one person having to fulfill, usually one person, maybe a small group of people having to fulfill all of those orders because they most likely don't have the infrastructure that a big company has, right?
You
So
think?
scalability becomes an issue because at some point you're going to hit a ceiling of the amount of books that you can fulfill, and you can't grow beyond that point. You can make a lot of money, but if we're talking about wanting to get a story out to the masses, there's a limit to how big you can get in crowdfunding.
I'm not so sure about that. I know I've interviewed a bunch of people on this show. A couple of them have already gotten television deals through their crowdfunding. It's possible. It's all, but it's one of again, because something I said earlier, Kickstarter has become, in particular, Indiegogo as well, but Kickstarter in particular has become a place where a lot of creators go and they can get big deals from other places, right? Because as a general rule of thumb, a lot of companies, a lot of studios have realized that there's a big minefield of great content to create with there, amazingly so. The question becomes, I think, for the creator themselves is what kind of business do they want to be? Do you want to be the entrepreneur? Or do you want to go corporate? Now, if you want to go corporate, I'm not sure that's possible with crowdfunding, but you can definitely be an entrepreneur. And as far as scalability goes, well, whatever, you might have to hire people.
Yeah, well, true.
I mean, and that's the thing, right? And there might be a point where you're gonna have to hire out. There might be a point where you're gonna have to. When I talked to Alex, like he had this whole vision board he wants his shared universe to go. Inevitably, like Alex is gonna have to hire out because he's not gonna be able to do it all himself. We talked about continuity comics. Neil Adams tried, man, blessed his heart. Neil Adams was an incredibly energetic dude. But the continuity comics was too big for him. Ironically, continuity comics was not anything but continuous. It was the irony of it just was like that was the irony. But that was because he had no one to help him. And instead of concentrating on one good story, he tried to do as many as he possibly could. And some of them are damn good. Some of them are okay. But, I mean, maybe if he had started smaller, he would have done better. Who knows? That's a question I would love to talk to Neil Adams with someday. But all of which to say is, I think, going back to something I said to you earlier, right? I don't think it's going to look the same. I think you're right. In the one sense, this is where I will give it to you. It won't look the same anymore because we're not in the same world. No, but we're not in the same world anymore either. But what is possible, it's still possible to scale. It's just it's understanding your objectives. This is something I've said to you when we gave you that 5 minutes. Understand your objectives and look at what you can do to get there.
Yeah, well, the thing is, you pointed out if scalability becomes an issue, hire more people. If I get to the point where I have enough money to invest in comic books that I can hire a bunch of people, At that point, I don't think I'm going to be doing crowdfunding. At that point, I think I'm going to be doing a subscription service
Maybe.
or selling, and obviously selling through uh, stores like Comixology, which is what I'm doing now. But then again, of course, you're right. The playing field is going to shift. It's never going to look like it did in the 80s and 90s. The comic stores, they're on their way out. So I think right now, where the industry is it's in this period of change and it needs to find its feet. And I think crowdfunding is a good stopgap. But I think that a new business model needs to emerge at some point in the near future, and that's what will bring things back, hopefully. Because I think that what comic books needs right now is something that is culturally relevant. That that people across subcultures, not just within one subculture, but people across subcultures can identify with.
So I think this is going to be my final thought on this one for you, and then we'll get to the wonderful plugging of stuff, because it's been great having you on the show. I hope you've had a good time. But something to think about. And because I feel with you, this is kind of where I see you at, maybe where you need to look at. You're right in one real sense. Every niche has a ceiling until it becomes a hit, right? And the thing about hits is you can't plan to be a hit. There's no magic formula for it. I mean, it just comes out of nowhere. There's no magical, right? But ultimately, the way hits become hits is the same as it always has been. You get people to talk about your work, right? Like, it just hits the right place at the right time. Like, in books, Harry Potter was the last mega hit, and it saved the industry at the time because no one knew what was going on. Prisoner of Azkaban she had done a couple books already, and they did okay, but it was her third book, just for whatever reason. Like, Harry Potter's 1 and 2 are good books, but Harry Potter book 3 is probably still the best book in that series, and it was really good. It was her at her absolute best, and again, she's not in vogue right now, but the fact is, Harry Potter was a cultural touchstone, big time, and when it hit, it reverberated into Twilight. It reverberated into the Hunger Games. It reverberated. Young adult fan fiction, in particular, has always been relatively strong. Since it's a bit oversaturated because it's so strong, but it's a strong market for a very good reason, and it's because of that book. But when she started, it was a genre piece. Walking Dead.
That's what I've been getting at. I think comics needs a hit.
Well, sure.
Right. You can't determine ahead of time what the hit is, but it needs one.
But that's one example. Walking Dead is a zombie comic. It hit. That's as niche as you get, man. That's as niche as you get. Not everybody likes zombies, but Rob Kirkman told a very compelling story that caught on with a lot of people. Now, personal note, I love his Invincible far more than I love his Walking Dead. But his Walking Dead caught on, right? That's the niche. Then eventually enough, because he wrote such a good story, right? And kudos to his creative team too. His creative team was really good. The whole presentation of the book stood out. But when you got right down to it, he told a really great story, and he had a lot of people that just caught on to it. And once it becomes a hit, that niche limitation is gone, right? Game of Thrones, same thing. That's fantasy, high fantasy. That's also a niche. Right? It hit at the right place at the right time. Do I think that the comic hit is coming again? Yes, I do. But I also think that right now everybody doing well in their niches is a great start. And I do think And I do think no matter where you go and what we do, identifying your niches is going to be a very important part of how comic creators do business going forward. And I think understanding there and then scaling from that and trying to scale from that will be the benchmark kind of going forward. That's just my thoughts on that. I could be wrong, but it just based on what I've seen and what has worked and what has done, we all start as a niche, and we just try to fulfill those niches to the best of our abilities. So, that's my thought.
Cool.
Alrighty. That all said, man. Good chat. I enjoyed it. I think we have an interview here. What do you think?
I think so. Definitely, everybody go buy High Treason League. It's great. Actually, no, we didn't really get to touch on the characters much. Shall I give the brief elevator pitch for the?
Sure. Absolutely. We're just getting to that wonderful part. So this is, who are you? How can people find you and talk about your book? Say whatever you'd like here.
All right. Well, I'm Web Bleynat. I do comic books and stuff, and I've one moment.
Sure.
And I have a book out called High Treason League, which is a story about people trying to fight for the position of the world king. The main character is Kaya, who's this adorable girl from a village that's under the thumb of an oppressive baron, who is forcing her to harvest derigium gas from the derigium flowers, which has healing properties. And she also has insanely powerful super strength, but she doesn't know how to fight. And she comes across a warrior named Trell. He does know how to fight, but he's a bit of a hothead. And so the two of them together are going to work to try to free the village from the thumb of the Baron. And then from there, they're going to try to change the world. So that's the story. I think it's going to be great. Art is by Levon Mason, also known as, you can find him on Twitter at Leo Savon. Really fantastic artist. I'm so happy I landed him. Does great work. Fantastic action, especially. The designs are really cool. He and I worked on the designs together. I think they came out great. And I think you will really, really be glad that you looked into High Treason League. I think you should definitely read it post-haste.
So who are you and how can people find you?
I am Web Bleynat. You can find me on Twitter at Hopcrop.
That's it? No webpage or anything like that for you?
No webpage. Just on Twitter at Hopcrop, and the book is on Comixology.
Yes, I already put the Comixology link up. Well, everyone, that was my chat with Web Bleynat. We had a pretty good fun one. I'm going to have probably a mystery guest tomorrow. I'm still kind of looking for one. I got some cool people coming up this week. My drinking draws with Shani O. It's going to be an interesting week for me personally, so stay tuned. But beyond that, guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. If you want to support this stream, you can do so a bunch of different ways. One of them, click the like and follow button on my Twitch, twitch.tv/JustJoshingPodcast. The other is my YouTube channel, Joshua Pentelresco. Click the like and subscribe. Stay inspired. Keep shining in the dark, and I'll see you guys hopefully tomorrow.